How can anything be more important? The reason why I'm asking is because there seem to be so many different problems in the world and so many different issues, yet none of them seem to be as important as the thing that is scaring my generation the most: climate change.
Hard to imagine a time when climate change wasn't a defining issue of a generation.
We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator.
During one of my more frequent occurrences of wanting to tackle my phone usage, which was about 3 hours a day, one of the ideas that I had was to set myself a limit and some kind of incentive to stick to this limit. For example, I could, as some people on the internet suggested, stick a $20 note on a mirror and burn it. Bit weird, but if I wanted to do it monetarily, what I could maybe do is donate to a charity, maybe a phone addiction charity, a addiction charity in general. But whenever I was looking around thinking which charity could I maybe donate to, it seemed like it was missing the point a bit. Like, yes, the well-being of people is important in life, but maybe more so the ability for people to actually live in the first place. To the generations above me, I want to give you a bit of an explanation as to the way that my generation generally seems to see the world in front of itself, as I think that every generation has their own experience of life and therefore their own viewpoints and perhaps stereotypes that go along with it. And I think for us, climate change is a really big problem, not only because of how daunting it is and how influential, well, badly influential it can be on our lives, but also because of how little we seem to be doing for it. For example, the way that I see the world and my life in front of me as I'm entering into adulthood is that not only are we being told about the fact that the world is getting warmer and extreme weather events are going to get more extreme and more frequent, but the fact that we don't have to look at these predictions or these guesses for what the future will be, because we can just look at now. Every year there's a heat wave. Every year a country is on fire or underwater. We don't have to look at these predictions for what the world might be in 10, 20, 30 years, because it is already becoming a place which is becoming more and more uninhabitable. Like, say, I look into the future of my life and I think of in 10 years and 20 years, I go live somewhere. I don't know whether I will be able to do that, and to do that in a way that I will be able to live for consecutive years of my life without during that experiencing something that will debilitate that, like a massive heat wave that is very warm, or destroy it, like a flood or a fire. Because I do not see why that isn't the most likely outcome. I think a big reason for why there's so little action against climate change is that despite people knowing about it and being aware of it, it doesn't really affect people on a day-to-day basis, or even a weekly or a monthly basis, which means that with everything impacting you, pulling you here, pulling you there, climate change is not one of those things that really is noticeable and impacts you on a day-to-day basis. Now, I think this also has an interesting link with social influence, namely minority influence and social support, in the fact that if you don't have people around you who are exhibiting behavior being like pro-environment, participating in things like the energy transition, installing LED lighting, insulation, solar panels, you don't have, the role models to perform that same behavior, but also the social pressure to do that same behavior. For example, a big example of social pressure and minority influence is the civil rights movement, where especially white people were challenged on their viewpoints of racial segregation. This is very similar to now, where there's a minority viewpoint trying to change the minority and becoming more environmentally friendly, where I do get the idea that blaming people on climate change isn't quite the right thing to do. Yes, individuals have a role to play and can improve their impact on the world, but it's also large companies that play a big role. For example, if you've ever seen the WWF footprint calculator, which I'll get up here, you've probably done this. I've done this before in school. Maybe not the best thing, because I've done it and I've got, it looks different now. I've got 114% footprint of the average UK person in 2023, which I don't know if that really means that it's good or bad, but it's all questions focused about my behavior, what I do with home, food, travel, and buying stuff. Same with buying stuff, same with food. I can choose, sure, what I want to buy, what food I want to buy if it's locally sourced, but my grocery shop decides if I can buy this without it being packaged in plastic. For example, I was part of a municipality-led initiative in my municipality to raise people's awareness of the energy transition and to encourage people to do things like install LED lighting, insulation, solar panels. And especially when talking to companies and to businesses in the town, then, well, a lot of companies were saying that yes, we're good for the environment. Look, we've got LED lighting, we've got some insulation, we've got some solar panels or whatever. And then whenever you really look at what they're actually doing, you know, often they don't have it, or they've got plans to do it. Plans is not what you actually have. And that, yeah, a lot of people say, why would we do it now whenever we can wait a few years? It'll be a bit cheaper, like solar panels. I mean, also like insulation. Insulation's pretty, well, not that difficult, but solar panels can become cheaper over time. And so, do they really have an incentive to do it now? No, not really. A thing to know about solar is that the way that it reduced in price so quickly and dramatically to the point where it is now cheaper to produce electricity with solar than with fossil fuels is that it required a bunch of government subsidies to incentivize its development and its construction. Fox even calls it a policy success story, and as we also see with other things in life, for example, subsidies on electric cars, they can work. It's just that as the price is decreasing, like with solar, these subsidies are decreasing. For example, the Netherlands' subsidy on electric cars really isn't that much. And a question might be if it is still such a big hindrance to people to invest into solar panels, insulation, all that stuff, is maybe these subsidies are ending just a bit too early. This problem isn't even unique to global warming. Take social media, for example, which runs off of the business model of attention capitalism, keeping you on their sites for as long as possible while serving you ads, unsatisfied enough that you'll continue scrolling. When Facebook a few years ago tried out in a test a way of running their business that would be better for its users, not focusing on keeping you for as long as possible and also helping your real-life connections, they found that A, it worked, and B, was also profitable. Now, it wasn't as easy to do and as profitable to do, which means that if Facebook doesn't have a reason to do this, for example, a ban on attention capitalism, then they will just continue doing that. And I think this ban with attention capitalism is really a sign with how the world is going. Not necessarily a ban on this, which I would advocate for, but just the fact that things are not going to happen unless people rise up to get them to happen. That's, I think, why you're seeing a lot of protests in the world, and while not necessarily ideal, arguably it might be the only real way of actually getting anything done. I think this is a very summarized and brief version of this viewpoint, but I guess for now, maybe we should try to do what we can for global warming, but maybe live in a bit of ignorance, or at least not worry for the things that we don't really have direct control over. Which isn't ideal, but maybe helps your mental health just a little bit.
This is the Dixie Fire in Northern California. It's been blazing since the middle of July and has continued to grow. It's now the second largest wildfire in state history. It's already consumed an entire town, yet it's just one of the many fires Americans have faced this year.